access their system so as to be able to load what I have actually prepared for you. So what happened is because I'm who I am, I decided to just admit, is that all right? Yeah. So when I see the smiles around here, I believe that I know that we're in the right place with the right people, because people are enjoying what they've come to listen to. I want to tell you a story. You know, back in the Caribbean, there was a friend of mine, well, I was my brothers and I, and he actually one time went along and smoked. Doctor, he went and smoked a marijuana joint. He became extremely happy. Is that what happens? I don't know. He became excited. And so he went on to the beach next door where there was a touristic area, and he went on the beach, and he was so excited that he took off all his clothes and he was walking on the beach. Oh, yeah. Obviously, the police were called, because, you know, the Caribbean's like that anyway. The police were called, and he was arrested. But he was not taken to the prison, because he was actually saying things they didn't understand. So he was taken to what we consider to be like on the mental asylum. And there he was put in, and he was one of the bad ones, so they put him with the bad ones. You know, the Caribbean had different sections, and he was placed in the bad one. But what happened that night, he stayed there, and he was okay, and even the bad ones were running from him, because he was really, really high. But you know what happened in the morning? I know that none of you have actually smoked before. I never did. I know you have not drank, so you don't know when and where off. What happens? What happens, anybody? You come back to your senses. And there he was in the mental asylum with the bad ones, and now he's back to his senses. My God, he actually nearly went crazy, as they put it that way. Because what happens in the Caribbean, and I don't know if it's in England, when somebody is actually suffering from any sort of mental illness, they always tell you, I am not crazy. Right. And what happened, he was telling the nurses, I am not crazy. And doctor, they were running from him. He actually nearly went crazy. But what happened, he was let out. Today I want to actually leave you with some thoughts that I had prepared, but cannot recall all of it. So I'll try my best to see what I can do. Because I want you to go from here understanding that every word has the ability to be able to be transmitted in a way that you can recall it. So I actually decided to use an acronym for the word bipolar. Is that all right? Yes. So when I see the B, what it reminds me of, far different these days than I would have taught long ago. It actually informs me of the benefits and not the limitations. You see what happened, and the active word here I want to actually tell you is the word thinking. I come from a scriptural background, so you know there's a scripture that says, as a man thinketh, so is he. What happens is that if you're going to think that every person who has bipolar is actually a threat or present some sort of harm to you, exactly what you're thinking is what you're inviting. What happens is that it makes me remember, and I'm going to finish in 3 minutes. I noticed I was given a salute. 3 fingers, absolutely excellent. What I'm saying, what happened, I remember one time in Dalston, it was during the winter. I was walking, and you know, in winter, what do? You walk with a coat, right? And if it's really cold, you have your coat on. And there was a lady coming down the other side, a white lady, she actually walked on the other side. Now, what I'm saying, as you think that somebody's going to harm you, believe you, you're introducing that to yourself. So I ask you to change your mindset and think not about the limitations, but think of the benefits. When I see the I think of the interest and the importance of valuing the person as a human being and understand that you know, when people signal me, I want to tell you a story. I'm telling you a story now. You know, there was this lady, and And she was actually in the airport, and she was waiting for a plane. And one hand the plane was delayed. So she went and bought a book. That's what you do, right? You buy a book, and if you notice where the books are always placed, they're always goodies, right? So she bought some cookies. And she went back and sat in a cool spot and was reading her book and started to eat her cookies. But there was another guy who was sitting right there. And what she noticed, at one time she turned around, his hand was in her cookies. She was upset, but she decided to leave it. As she took one, he took one. As she took one, he took one. When it came to the last one, she thought, let me see what he was going to do now. And he said, so then he took the cookie out, he broke it, and he gave her half. She was so incensed with rage, she grabbed the cookie from his hand. And the same time, the plane announced that they were about to board. So as she was walking to the plane, doctor, she was upset. I suppose she might have actually had a bipolar experience. As she was walking to the plane, she was so upset. And when she got into the plane, she was still upset. She sat down in her seat. And after relaxing for a while, she decided to read her book. She looked into the bag, took the book out, but there was another glance, because in the bag was her cookies. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying to you, be careful when you meet people, because you never know. You may be eating their cookies.
That's true. That's true.
Oh wow, that's a good one. He's a very good storyteller. I had a good teacher, actually a mentor, told to me about 3 years ago when I started public speaking. And one of the things he said is, when you go talking, always leave them with a story. People never forget stories. And that's the truth. People never ever forget stories. There may be some bits or blobs of it, but they don't forget stories. Okay, I'm going to very quickly call on the... How should I introduce you? Come on, you know you're next on the agenda. Everybody has a copy of the agenda. Dr. Sade Olajubu. An intelligent and... don't let me talk too much. I don't want her to go purple. Or is it yellow? I don't want her to go purple.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm going to share some of my cookies, protein from Cuthbert. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good? Have the speakers been great?
Yeah.
I think they've been awesome. Can we just give a round of applause to them? Well, my name is Shadi, and I'm feeling a bit, overwhelmed because I'm having to speak after all these amazing people. But I've got a task to do, and I'm going to do it. What Lade asked me to do was to talk a little bit more about talking therapies, but I'm going to kind of almost pull everything that we've heard today together. And I think it's always important in this kind of forum that we have a dialogue, isn't it? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, just so that hopefully you'll listen to me. So my name is Shade, and I could talk about the fact that I'm a forensic psychiatrist, so I work at the extreme end of psychiatry. Or I could talk about the fact that I'm in medical education. And I could talk about the fact that I'm a therapist. But I think today, apart from drawing from all those strands, the most important thing is I'm somebody who has suffered from depression and overcome it. And the fact that there is a very strong family history of mental illness. So I'm passionate, and I say passionate, about developing awareness. So when you listen to me today, remember that I wear all those caps, and the most important one is, that I'm probably a patient by experience as well, and I really want to celebrate this young man over here. Can we just clap for him? Because it takes braveness. Unfortunately, as we've heard, there's a stigma around mental illness. And yet, 1 in 4 of us are going to have a mental health illness at some point. So it's time to talk. So I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview of some of the things we've heard this morning. I'm majoring a bit at the end about treatment in terms of talking therapies, because I'm also a trained therapist. So, no, can we go back, please? So, next. So, starting there. So, most of us in here will know that this week is the Mental Health Awareness Week. And the theme is thriving or striving, or striving or thriving. And the thinking behind that is about the fact that, we hear a lot about mental illness, and we are going to talk about mental illness, or we have been talking about mental illness already, but it's also about mental well-being. And the way I put it forward is that when we talk about physical health, most of us in this room would hear about the numbers. So people are told about, you need to check your weight and your BMI and your blood pressure. And depending on what those readings are, it's indicative of your physical health. And really, we need to get to start having that dialogue about the fact that there are pointers in terms of our mental health as well. And when you see certain things, it means that you need to take action. So it doesn't, if they just understood the signs and symptoms when they're getting stressed, when it was less complex, they wouldn't end up being treated by me. But because people don't understand the symptoms and the signs, it just gets out of hand. And the other thing is about people not being aware where they should seek help from. So that's the thinking. So we had mental illness, or we know somebody. That's the more reason why we need to be informed and make ourselves aware. So I often start when I'm sharing, talking, by talking about the World Health Organization definition of health. And I'm just going to read it out because I think it's really important. The definition by WHO, which was made in 1948, but still stands true today, is that health is a state of complete physical, can I hear you say physical? Physical. Mental. And social well-being. And not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So to be mentally well and to be physically well, to be healthy, really, there are different components. There's the physical side of things, there's the mental side of things, and the social thing. So today I've come with three very important people in my life. Please can you help me celebrate my eldest daughter, my biological daughter Grace. And I've also got another daughter and my granddaughter there, Shayo and Fumi. Can you please help me celebrate them? Why am I saying that? Because social support is so important. When I think about my own life, I know I would not be standing, but for the social support and the relationship that I have. That's why I'm acknowledging those ones that I love so much who have supported me here today. Thank you. So, we've heard what health is. It's physical health, it's mental health, it's social well-being. And if you have a lapse in one area, then ultimately you're not as healthy as you think you should be or can be. And if you don't address those areas, then there's going to be a deterioration and you could become ill. So, talking about bipolar affective, Dr. Femi has done such an amazing job and HA has told us practically. But just going through the symptoms again to be sure, it's the medical educationist in me now. The first thing to know is bipolar affective disorder is a mental illness. What did we say? Mental illness. And mental illness, put very simply, is an illness of the mind. And when you have a mental illness, whether it's bipolar or anything else, it's going to affect your thinking and your emotions, and by extension, your behavior. So can I hear you say thinking, emotions, behavior. And that's what Ms. Palmer was telling us about a little bit. And that's any type of mental illness. So when somebody has a mental illness, there's going to be a derangement in their thinking, a derangement in their emotions, and invariably, if those things aren't corrected, it will impact on their behavior. The next thing in terms of bipolar is a mood disorder. Now, what does that mean? The symptoms, there are lots of symptoms that we've heard, but the central thing that drives the behaviors is the mood. Yeah? So all the other things you see are as a result of that person being depressed and being unhappy. If Grace annoys me, not that she does, let's do it the other way. If I annoy Grace, Grace doesn't like being disturbed in the morning. And I'm one of these mothers that I just have to talk to her before I go to work. And she's sleeping, it's Saturday, and she wakes up. And I go, Grace! Or I call her Pretty. And she opens her eyes, she's like, yeah, Mom? I'm like, yeah, I just need to tell you about it. I'm like, Mom? But I really need to talk about it. Mom? Of course, when I go off and I've disturbed her sleep, she's unhappy. But she's not clinically depressed. So we have normal mood states that vary depending on what's going on for us. But what we're talking about is illness, and it's the extreme. And with bipolar, it's characterized by either extreme highs and extreme lows. So what you find in this individual is that somebody, at times they're depressed, really clinically depressed, and at other times they're very, very high. And sometimes, as Dr. Femi said, there's a mixture of the two. Next slide, please. So, just some key facts, so that we know it's not, as one of the speakers said, it's not often common. So we all need to recognise it. The second thing I said is a mood disorder. As we said earlier on, the normal age of onset actually is between 15 to 19, with a peak at 25. But some people have like a late onset, so 40s and 50s. So H, not using you, you kindly shared your story. A lot of people begin to suffer bipolar, or it really kicks in around the age. And it affects everybody. So it's not a white illness or a black illness or an Asian illness, it's everybody. And there's an equal distribution between males and females, but the pattern of how it exhibits itself is different. So, as Dr. Femi said, females tend to have more depressive episodes and men tend to have more of the mania things. And then some people have like a mixed bag. So, just again going over the symptoms, we've heard many people say them today. People have increased energy, marked irritability, racing thoughts, precious speech, they're just talking and talking and talking, can't be interrupted. They have something called grandiosity. It's a very unrealistic self-image of their abilities. They think they can do anything, unrealistic plans. They can become quite disinhibited or provocative, which causes problems in their relationships. Many of them can be quite bizarre in their dressing. So a lot of women, when they have, they go high, they wear very garish makeup, bright makeup. They might wear skirts that are too short. And you're just looking thinking, why is that woman of 60 wearing a skirt right up here? But she feels fantastic. We've heard about sleep difficulties. So sleep goes out of the window. People going for 24, 48 hours without sleep. We've heard about sexual energy, what others would call sexual promiscuity, but it's about the disinhibition. Again, we've heard about violence and aggression, and when it gets to the extreme in terms of mania, they become psychotic. And what do we mean by psychosis? They lose touch with reality, they start having bizarre thoughts and beliefs which are not in keeping with their culture, and then they start hearing voices. And the voices might start telling them things like they're God, or they're special, or they have special powers, which then reinforces the behaviour. And remember what we said about mental illness is about your thinking, your emotions, and your behaviour. Next one, please. In terms of depression, we've heard lots of talking about depression today, anergia, a complete lack of energy. When I suffered from depression, I would find it difficult to get out of bed. Everything felt like an effort. To think felt like an effort. To do the simplest things. Again, my daughter's given me permission to share this. I always remember about 10 years ago when I was feeling depressed, and I come from a faith background, so forgive me. And we were supposed to be going to church, and my daughter then, it was 14, so about 10, yeah? And I remember then her and her sister standing on my bed and saying, "Mommy, get up, let's go to church." I knew I wanted to go to church, but there was no energy to do it. And it was the same in terms of going to work. It just feels like you've got lead on your feet and everything is so heavy. Again, irritability, so you can become very irritable, maybe frustrated with yourself. A subjective sense of feeling low, but it doesn't lift. And in terms of, for somebody who's clinically depressed, what you normally find is they feel worse in the morning, so very difficult getting out of bed. And their mood might improve just a little bit as the day progresses. Tearfulness, crying about anything and nothing, as the case may be. Thinking. So somebody who's clinically depressed has a subjective sense of helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. So there's no point going up to them and saying that you're really talented and beautiful, you've got a lot to live for. Hello, they can't receive it. They tend to isolate themselves. It's too much energy to talk or be around people. Poor self-care. So you see somebody who used to be meticulous. Now, won't do their makeup, won't even shower, brush their teeth. No energy, no motivation. And the last one is a technical word, and I'm doing it, which means that things that would normally give them pleasure, they no longer get pleasure. So, for example, somebody like me, I love music, but during those phases, I couldn't even be bothered to put on any music and not really get any kind of enjoyment. Next one, please. Further symptoms of depression. Sleep disturbance, so either not sleeping at all. Classical one is going to sleep and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Or you have the other extreme where the person just sleeps around the clock. Appetite changes again, either not eating or eating too much. Weight changes, gaining weight or losing weight. Cognitive difficulties. So the person with depression, I remember this example because your attention, your concentration goes and it causes memory difficulties. And then at the extreme, you have thoughts of suicide or even going beyond that. And you have what we call, again, if you go really over the edge, psychotic symptoms. And in depressive symptoms, you might hear voices. I didn't have that. But some people will hear voices speaking to them, telling them to kill themselves or to harm themselves or life isn't worth living. And then in ethnic minorities, many of us find it difficult to speak about our emotions. And many people from ethnic minorities and the Asian continent get somatic symptoms. So I've got a number of patients who are from Asia and India. And they won't tell me, doctor, I feel depressed. They'll tell me I've got a headache. So I've got one particular patient. Anytime he tells me he's got headache or stomachache, I know that something is the matter. So in terms of treatment, I'm trying to put everything together. Treatment is biological, is a biopsychosocial. That is the model for treatment of mental illness, whatever kind of mental illness it is. So we've heard Dr. Femi talk about medication, so I'm not going to get into the details of medication. But as I was sitting down, another thing that crossed my mind was in terms of the biological, is about doing things to make your brain function better. Because mental illness is about a dysfunction of your brain function. And so the things that Teresa spoke about, such as trying to sleep, before you tip over the edge, trying to get proper sleep, proper rest, eating properly, exercising, spending time with friends, having leisure. These are all things that promote your health and cause you to thrive as opposed to just survive. And these things also have an impact on your brain function to help you feel better in conjunction with medication. And the reason why medication is given for bipolar or depression or anxiety is because there are chemical imbalances in the brain. And the medication is to level out the hormones, the chemicals, put very simply. The next thing is about, I'll go back to social support. So we've heard Teresa talking about the importance of talking, about having friends, about spending time with relatives. It's all very important in terms of treating any kind of mental illness. And as you heard H.A. speak about the fact that when he was high, about overspending, getting into debt, etc. A lot of times when somebody's had bipolar, especially if they've gone high, they need that support after to pull their life back together, to deal with their debt management, maybe to get alternative housing and get themselves back into education. So that's all part of the social support, and it's treatment. So in the hospital I work in, we have social workers, and their main function is to deal with the social side of support. And then the next bit is the talking therapist. So, BT used to say it's good to talk. So how many of you remember the advert with Bob Hoskin? Anybody remember? Yeah? It is good to talk. And if you think about the World Health Day, 10th of October last year, the theme was psychological therapies. And the message that is going out everywhere now is it is good to talk. So I want you to hold on to that as we go into the next bit, that we have to talk about mental illness, but we have to talk to each other about how we feel. So, some of the talking therapies. Nice guidelines in this country for every illness, whether it's mental illness or physical illness, there's a set of guidelines which sets out appropriate treatment. And within this guideline, it's called the NICE guideline. They've listed these talking therapies, and I've added one because I know it's the basis. And the talking therapies are psychoeducation, CBT, interpersonal therapy, and family therapy. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about those very quickly. Next one. So, the key principle that you need to know about psychoeducation is that knowledge is power. Many people end up at the extremes in terms of mental illness because they don't have the basic information. So, the principles of psychoeducation, which is a form of talking therapy, a form of psychological intervention, is about making sure that you understand the illness. So whether it's bipolar or any other kind of illness, a therapist like Teresa will sit down with you over a number of sessions and will work with you to make sure you understand your symptoms, understand the triggers to your illness. So for example, some people become high when they've been stressed or overworked. Understand protective factors, so things that you can do to reduce the likelihood of becoming unwell. They'll work with you to make you understand the impact of your illness. So whether you're somebody who goes very high or very low, it does have an impact on your lifestyle and should be a motivation for you to embrace treatment so it doesn't have a destructive impact on your lifestyle. It will also teach you about the associated risks. So if you think you're Superman and you're delusional, you could jump off that balcony. So it's about understanding the risks associated when you're acutely unwell, and it's about understanding treatment, and then about relapse prevention. Relapse prevention is a big thing. If you understand your illness, if you understand your treatment, if you understand your triggers, and you know the things that can enhance you staying well, and you follow them, you're less likely to keep on going through a pattern of becoming unwell. So for me personally, as a clinician, I think psychoeducation is one of the most important talking therapies. Next one. I'm not going to go too much into CBT because Teresa's spoken about it, but I want you to just hold on to this message that change thinking leads to change behaviour. And really, that's the underlying principle in terms of CBT, that if you change your thinking, ultimately you change your behaviour. So in terms of, normally CBT is used for treating depression and anxiety, but other things. The focus is, I'm not going to go into the details because the expert is here, but it's really about focusing on current challenges, whatever they may be. And it's about understanding negative thought patterns. Most people get into very negative thought patterns and recreate them. It's also about looking at agreed goals and practical solutions and improving coping strategies. Next one. Interpersonal therapy. The key principle I want you to hold on to is the way you relate to others will invariably impact upon your mental well-being and recovery. So people who have very good interpersonal skills tend to have improved mental well-being because life is about relationships. So the principles of interpersonal therapy is about, it's a short-term thing relatively, it's very structured, it doesn't focus on the symptoms of your illness. The focus is more about your social function and how you relate to others. And it focuses on difficulties that you might have as an individual in terms of relating to other people. Next one. Family therapy. The key I want you to remember is that relationships matter. I think you've heard everybody say that today. Next one, please. Next one, please. Let's not finish.
Sorry. It's my fault.
Right. So the principles of family therapy, we've heard that family relationships are important. And the principle of family therapy, you have to remember that if you have a mental illness or somebody else has a mental illness and you're in a relationship with them, it will impact on your relationship. And family therapy is about understanding the impact of mental well-being on family relationships, understanding how behavior affects relationships, affirm to make sure that we're mutually supportive, understanding the other person's experience. So what it's like if you have a mental illness and you're living with your relatives. Being able to express emotions in a safe place, appreciating the needs of the others, reflecting on your relationship dynamics, improving communication, and ultimately the aim is to have supportive relationships that support your mental well-being. Next one, we're almost finished now. So we have the expert here, but I never go anywhere without just trying to find out what the local links are. And in this area, these are some of the local facilities in terms of talking therapies. Thank you very, very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alajide. So much information packed in 15 or 18 minutes thereabout. So much information. We're going to start the open mic session now. Are we looking forward to it?
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Debayo, I have to give you a prize on the bench because it looks like you're the only person who's kind of following or who started with me at the beginning.
Too many cups of coffee.
Are we looking forward to the open mic session?
Yes.
But before we do, one of the things that I do understand is that for communication, for us to make impact in our community, one bird cannot fly and cover the whole of the sky. You take your patch, you work on it. You collaborate, you join wings together, and you fly together. The sky is too wide for one person to want to aim to cover. So the news understands the fact that there's a need to collaboratively work with other organizations, which we do. Over the years, in the last 2 years, we've worked with other organizations. One of the very outstanding ones that we've worked with is Star Children Initiative. And I'm going to call the CEO out now, who's going to talk for 2 minutes, and I need 2 minutes. And I'll be counting the seconds as soon as I give her the microphone. It's going to be less than that. She's telling me to be less than that. Mental health or mental illness, let's talk about mental well-being, pervades every single side of our being. So when you're at work, there are issues about mental health at work. In the home, family dynamics can be affected by mental health. With your family, with your siblings, in the community, whilst you're out on the streets, all of these areas of our lives can be affected by somebody else's mental health or mental well-being. So it's all very much linked together. Mrs. Grace Abimbola Alexander is the CEO of Star Children Initiative, and she's going to be talking. It's okay to clap. Thank you for starting to clap. Thank you for starting to clap. And she's going to be talking, well, I'll stand beside her, because this is all woman that if you give her the mic, she's just like me, she will talk forever. So I'll stand beside her.
Hello everyone, I hope everybody is learning a lot. I would say disability and mental health, they are inextricably linked together. I'm a proud mother of a child living with disability, and I think I have a fair share of mental health issues as well. Think about a mother who has had children that are not living with disability, and then you have another child that was quite normal, inverted comma, open and close, and I realized that I started having epilepsy, having 21, 28 feet a day when he was 7. And how would I have felt as a mother? I did not realize I was going through mental health issues, because I did not even realize that I've internalized, coming from Nigeria, African background, I've internalized disability. I realized I was having obsessive compulsive disorder. I was buying newspaper voice. I was spending almost 250 every week because I want to keep active. I knew something was not normal, but then I was not able to say it out because of the stigma. And then I love fashion, and you can say that. I rock, don't I? And I was buying oversize just to keep my sanity. My marriage was going through a lot of headache because my husband was asking me, where did you get the child? Typical African man. Is he in your family that has any mental, that has a child with disability? And the sense of loss, bereavement. When the doctor said he will be using this medication for life, I was in denial. I stopped. Then he started having that epilepsy. And I can realize when Dr. Adebayo was mentioning about Epilim, was mentioning about Tetragal, my son is using them. And I realized that, obviously I was trying to, there's a thin line between sanity and insanity. What matters to me is about my child, because obviously the family dynamics were affected. So how do I look after this child? How do I create that enabling environment? I need to be sane. And the system is not even helping, because they are using your child as a business proposal. These are the hours. And I like to keep active. I couldn't walk. Economically, you're isolated. Socially, you're isolated. So those are the issues that compound. But then, over time, I learned to be active. And that's why I was buying those papers. I learned to find a purpose, until I found a purpose after 8 years. That is when I started looking back. And actually, I feel blessed having him as a son, because through him, I'm able to impact on lives. So, and when I look at him now, when he was 21, I was like, I thank God. I'm a Christian, and that helps me to keep sane. So even though when you realize you have issues, I was not able to talk out. I was putting this face as if everything was all right, but it wasn't all right. I was buying papers because I lost my sense of worth. My sense of identity of who I am. I'm not proactive. I'm going to work. Work was my sanity at that time. And obviously, I went through bipolar. Sometimes there was one day I shook my son, and I thought I broke his neck. And I cried. I cried with nobody inside except me and him and God. And you know what? I'm here standing that you have to be able to connect with support groups, especially mothers that have been in your shoes before, And then you have to be active. Because once you stay at home and you are not finding something to do, then the next thing is that it becomes a pattern. Like you can't be able to stand up. And that is what I do now, supporting parents. Because for you to be the best advocate, the challenges are not stopping. I mean, my son is 22 now. Obviously, the fear of the unknown, I don't give a damn about the unknown because I celebrate my son.
That's it.
I don't give a damn whether he has a first class, any form of improvement in his well-being cause for elation in my household. And I thank God for the fact that I'm able to use my experience to support other parents who are raising a star child like me.
Yes. Thank you.
Another child that speaks like my own star child, and I know they will be blessed. Thank you.
I told you, if I give her the microphone, I will have to peel it off from her.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. That's fantastic. The truth is we all have a story to tell. But I do understand that we've said a lot today and there's so many questions. I have questions. I know I won't have a break, so people approach me and say, oh, I have questions. And you see this seat here, I call them hot seats. So it's not exactly going to be a big privilege to call you there, but it just shows that you have the necessary skills and you may be able to answer or you may not be able to answer. At the end of the day, we may not be able to answer all the questions, but the important thing is that we're living here with lots of information about things that we're going to redress, things that we're going to do better when we leave here. So without much ado, I'm going to be calling on Dr. Shade Olajibu onto the hot seat. It's not a high table. People call it high, it's not a high table because it's not high. Have you been to weddings before? Let me divert a little bit. Have you been to weddings before? And then they say, I want to call to the high table. And you look at the table is on the same level. It's not high. But it's a hot table, it's a hot seat. Because they're going to be asking you questions. Can I call on Dr. Adebayo, please? Join us. It's okay to clap. You know what? When you make other people feel good, you make yourself feel good. That's the truth. It's okay to clap. I'm going to call on Eche. Eche, thank you so much. And I'm going to call on Teresa Palmieri. And if you have a copy of the agenda, you'll see that my name is there. So I'm going to call on myself. Actually, I'm not going to sit down, but I'm just going to be coordinating. So, questions. Open mic session. And, okay. 1, 2, 3. 1.
Hello. Yeah. The first question I'm going to ask is, I know with mental health and some other ailments, there are always concerns, and that's been raised around here, about the dangerous side effects of, if you like, Western drugs and all of that. I don't know in terms of, what is being done about it, what's been done to respond to it, what the thoughts are, current thoughts, if you like, about alternative therapy. And what I mean by that is the alternative medicine, like we find in some other ailments. That's my first question. The second question is got to do with interpretations about, particularly within the within religious community. I don't know who will answer that question. Too often, when people I've seen it before, when people have mental health, people talk about being possessed by demons and all of that kind of stuff, and that creates a bit of stigma as well, and then what I find is responding to that in terms of finding realistic solutions is probably is quite sensible. Dealing with religious faiths, religious organizations, there's been what are the ways that approaches in trying to surmount this kind of thinking?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's Mr. Soji Elao. I've known him for 35 years. Give me a round of applause, please. We went to university together.
So first question, that's two-pronged question. The one about medication, we actually have a pharmacist. Do you want to sit on the hot seat or you want to stay here? Would you be able to answer the question, please?
I was going to allow the psychiatric lady to answer.
Dr. Shade.
But I know the lady pharmacist will assist me as well. So the first thing to remember is that all medication has side effects. Even good old paracetamol, if you go into the Bible of medication, which is called BNF, will list like hundreds of side effects for every single medication. The issue really is about understanding your patient and making sure that you prescribe a medication that agrees with them with limited or tolerable side effects. So for example, when Dr. Adebayo was speaking about some of the mood stabilizers, one knows as a clinician that you don't prescribe things like Valproate when the person's pregnant. So that's the first thing. In terms of the second question, in terms of reaching faith communities, etc., I'm a committed Christian, and one of the things I feel that I've been led to do is to meet people where they are. If you go into a community and you almost rubbish their own beliefs, you have shut down the lines of communication and influence even before you start. So one of the things I do as a committed Christian is I've gone through my scriptures and I go and give talks in churches and I marry it with the Bible to show the individuals that I'm not discounting their own beliefs, but that we can marry those beliefs together. There's nothing wrong, for example, in praying, but after you finish praying, for example, using the Christian faith, then there are practical things you need to do. But if you don't connect with people and you alienate them, then you cannot influence them. So it's about coming down to people's levels.
Can I just get something here? Personally, as a therapist, I do work in Brent, which is a very diverse borough, and I do work with people with lots of different cultural and religious backgrounds. And I think there's one thing that I've learned, which is, and I'm still learning, it's just always to adopt a stance of curiosity. Always asking people, what is that for you? What does that mean for you? And I'm Italian. I'm from, a Christian, and I don't know lots of things about lots of other cultures and religions, and I think that the only thing I can do is just to ask people, to ask, okay, what is it? Tell me about what you believe in. I think it's important to stay curious all the time.
Yeah, and if I may just add to that, I do know that a lot of us have grown in environments where we have age-old beliefs. I'm a Christian, but however, I'll just talk a little bit about what I know people believe in Christianity. And that's the fact that they believe when people start to behave bizarrely, that is because it's a demon possession. And some people would prescribe, the only prescription they'll give to you is to go to church or to go to your imam to be delivered. They believe you have to go through deliverance. What I say most times, because when the news started, we actually wrote to a lot of organizations, a lot of churches to say, we'd like to come and educate people. Education is very powerful.